launch unlimited comments. He's campaigning in part against the prosecutors themselves. At some point, if the judge determines that that could affect the jury, a future jury pool, then a gag order could be considered. I think it's too early in the case to conclude that whatever Trump is saying is contaminating a jury pool.
All right, thanks for joining us on this busy morning here on Morning Rush. I'm Lindsay Tuckman. Let's send things over now to Veronica Cruz for another busy afternoon.
Absolutely right about that, Lindsay. Thank you so much. So now that the former president has been arraigned and booked, the question, what comes next?
What we are witnessing is the blatant and unapologetic weaponization of the criminal justice system.
The unprecedented prosecution of a former president is going to be met with all the legal firepower money can buy.
Threatening me with 400 years in prison is one of the most outrageous and vicious legal theories ever put forward in an American court of law.
What we can expect as the Department of Justice presses forward with its historic criminal case. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visiting China this week as Washington looks to ease tensions with Beijing. And the Federal Reserve making an announcement on interest rates today, why it could decide to end its 15-month streak of rate hikes. Scripps News Live begins right now. Former President Trump says that he hasn't broken the law and he is vowing to fight the 37 felony criminal charges against him. Hello to you. Good to see you on this Wednesday. Welcome to Scripps News Live. I'm Veronica Cruz. So hours after pleading not guilty before a federal magistrate judge in Miami, Trump took off for New Jersey for a fundraiser. And there he addressed an audience of supporters and donors at his Bedminster Golf Club. In a fiery speech, Trump argued that his handling of classified documents seized from his Mar-a-Lago estate fell within legal guidelines.
Judge Amy Berman Jackson's decision states, under the statutory scheme established by the Presidential Records Act, the decision to segregate personal materials from presidential records is made by the president during the president's term and in the president's sole discretion. You're surprised to hear that, aren't you?
Scripps News is team coverage for you right now of former President Trump's historic arraignment with national political correspondent Avajoy Burnett, who's live for us in Miami. She's going to explain what comes next in this closely watched case. Also, national political correspondent Haley Bull, who's live for us outside of Trump's golf club in Bedminster. She has more on his message to supporters and donors. Let's go and begin right here with Avajoy Burnett, who's in Miami with the latest details. And Avajoy, we know that Trump and his attorneys are really going to do whatever it takes here to fight these charges. So now that the arraignment is over, what can we expect?
Hi, Veronica. Well, as you know, the former president is no stranger to the courtroom. He's going to use any legal tactic possible to make that fight a winnable fight for him. And that is where his legal team will come in. They will be deploying motions in order to weaken this case.
Former President Donald Trump is about to embark on a legal challenge unlike any he's faced before. And in order to tackle this 37-count federal criminal indictment he now faces, defense attorneys are expected to file a series of motions that could delay the process. One motion the legal team has already hinted it will pursue is allegations of prosecutorial misconduct by the special counsel Jack Smith's team. Former federal prosecutor and law professor Paul Pelletier explains that concept.
They've asserted that the prosecution took liberties that they shouldn't have taken. In other words, they've asserted that one witness was offered a judgeship in exchange for their testimony. Now, I'm not so sure there's any truth behind that, but it'll be motions like that.
The 49-page indictment accuses the former president of hoarding highly sensitive documents, then obstructing justice when the government tried to get them back. In one exchange, Trump allegedly said to his attorney, "Wouldn't it be better if we just told them we don't have anything here?" His current lawyers may argue that was privileged information between a client and his attorney. Prosecutors are aiming for a speedy trial, and the law requires a trial date be set within 70 days of the arraignment.
My office will seek a speedy trial in this matter, consistent with the public interest and the rights of the accused.
Legal experts believe any delay could be an advantage for the former president.
And remember, if he's the elected nominee, at least in his mind, he could be, then he's never going to be prosecuted if he's elected president. Also, DeLay is his friend. If another Republican gets nominated, he would want that person to be elected and ultimately be pardoned.
Now, the judge is the one who will set the deadline for when those motions need to be filed, and that's when the defense team will step in and file their motions. The prosecution will then have an opportunity, Veronica, to respond to those initial motions, and then once again, the defense will be able to come in and respond to that response.
All right, Abijoy Burnett reporting live from Miami. We appreciate the update. Thank you. So shortly after pleading not guilty to those 37 federal charges, Trump made an unscheduled appearance at the famous Versailles restaurant in Miami's Little Havana. There, he was greeted by a large crowd of supporters who sang happy birthday a day before turning 77. He also spoke with reporters, calling this case against him, quote, rigged.
I think it's a rigged deal here. We have a rigged country. We have a country that's corrupt. We have a country that's got no borders. We have a country that's got nothing but problems. We're a nation in decline, and then they do this stuff. And you see where the people are. We love the people, and you see where they are. You see the crowds and everything else. We have a country that is in decline like never before, and we can't let it happen.
We continue our coverage right now with Scripps News national political reporter Haley Bull, who's live for us in Bedminster, New Jersey. So, Haley, I know that you were watching closely. You saw those crowds there gathering in Miami, but you also saw the crowds gathered last night at the Bedminster Golf Club. And from your vantage point, what has it been like so far? What has the reaction been like to Trump's arraignment?
Well, Veronica, in Bedminster, the crowd was solely Trump supporters, so they were very much looking forward to hear what he had to say and show that they stand behind the former president. His remarks, about a half hour long, really set the stage as he now navigates being a candidate and a defendant, but he largely stuck to the same criticisms we have heard from him previously against the Biden administration, against the Justice Department and special counsel, framing this as a, quote, political persecution.
A historic moment in Miami on Tuesday as former President Donald Trump pleads not guilty to 37 federal charges. Those charges alleging he jeopardized national security by holding on to top secret documents at his Florida estate. After leaving the federal courthouse, Trump's motorcade made a stop on the way to the airport at a local Cuban restaurant where he celebrated his 77th birthday a day early.
We have a country that's corrupt. We have a country that's got no borders. We have a country that's got nothing but problems. We're a nation in decline.
Before hopping on his plane to his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, where he typically spends the summer, and making his first public remarks after his arraignment.
I had every right to have these documents.
In front of hundreds of supporters, Trump seemed to lay out a potential legal argument, framing the indictment as a political persecution, doubling down on his view of a double standard.
Hillary Clinton broke the law, and she didn't get indicted. Joe Biden broke the law, and in many other ways we're finding out, and so far has not gotten indicted. I did everything right, and they indicted me.
Earlier in the day, Trump appeared with his valet, Walt Nata, before Magistrate Judge Jonathan Goodman. Nata was listed as a co-defendant and is also facing charges. Trump's booking process only took a few minutes and included digital fingerprinting and a photo that was uploaded into the court system. However, it was not a mugshot.
Rare indeed.
Former U.S. Attorney Peter Strasser told Scripps News on Tuesday, this is a rare event in history.
It is absolutely stunning that we have a president of the United States who's facing not state charges, but federal charges. It's something one can see in other countries around the world, but it is definitely unique for this country.
This is one of several legal cases Trump faces with potential implications for his second presidential run in 2024. And President Biden was pretty clear when asked about the arraignment.
Would you comment on the arrest of the former president, sir?
No.
But for now, Trump navigates being a candidate and a federal defendant. Charges like the ones he faces can carry a sentence of up to 20 years in prison.
And Trump also held a private fundraiser following those remarks with about 60 people at his golf club, Veronica. It's fair to say, I think, that his campaign will be watching those numbers, as it's no secret they have looked to raise more funds in the wake of news of his indictment. We've seen multiple fundraising emails come through over the past week, so we'll certainly be tracking that as well.
Do we know what those numbers look like right now, Haley?
Not at this point. We haven't gotten fresh numbers from the campaign yet this afternoon, but I anticipate, if that is a success, that's certainly something a campaign typically likes to boast. So we'll be following that.
All right, Haley Blow reporting live for us from Bedminster, New Jersey. Haley, thank you. All right, President Biden, in the meantime, continues to remain silent on former President Trump's federal indictment.
Would you comment on the arrest of the former president, sir?
And now Politico is reporting that the president has ordered the Democratic National Committee in his re-election campaign to follow his lead. The president wants to avoid any narrative that he and his inner circle are trying to influence any of the investigations against Trump right now. But Politico also reports some of the president's top advisors think that he's missing an opportunity here to weaken Trump's presidential campaign by remaining quiet. Now, Republicans, in the meantime, are split on the former president's indictment. Some House lawmakers expressing concern about the charges leveled at Trump after the arraignment yesterday.
A military guy, he allegedly had national security information.
It's very problematic. There's a reason I'm not defending it.
Would you be okay with that, having a convicted felon as your nominee?
I'd just have to read the conviction. But no, honestly, on the surface, I wouldn't. That doesn't look good.
Now in the Senate, one Trump loyalist is fighting back. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance says that he's going to move to block confirmations for President Biden's Justice Department nominees in light of both former President Trump's indictment and what he says about the FBI becoming politicized.
These political appointments are fundamentally the foot soldiers of Merrick Garland's politicization of the FBI. We're going to hold that process up because every single person we give him, it's very clear, even if they're a good person, even if I might vote for them, it's very clear that what they're being used for is to attack Joe Biden's political opponents. We've got to stop it. We've got to show Merrick Garland there are consequences to using the Department of Justice in this way.
Senator Vance's protest will not stop the Senate from confirming the president's nominees, but it will slow down Senate business because it's going to force Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to schedule votes for each individual nominee. And our coverage of the historic arraignment of former President Trump will continue in this hour of Scripps News Live. We're going to explain how a recent shakeup in his legal team could impact his defense. We're also going to take a closer look at Walt Nauta, the personal aide now being charged as Trump's co-defendant. Also ahead, Secretary of State Antony Blinken traveling to China Friday as Washington looks to temper tensions with Beijing. Plus, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell making an announcement straight ahead at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, why analysts are saying that the Fed is going to hit the brakes on interest rate hikes, at least for now. Plus, more than 2,000 Americans accused of stealing $280 billion worth of pandemic relief, and auditors aren't even done going over the books. It's all straight ahead when Scripps News Live comes back.
Welcome to the place where people go to learn about their Medicare options before they're on Medicare.
Come on in. You're turning 65 soon?
Yeah.
And you're retiring at 67?
That's the plan.
Well, you've come to the right place.
Now's the time to plan ahead. Learn about an AARP Medicare Supplement Insurance Plan from United Healthcare. And how a plan like this helps you take charge of your healthcare with lower out-of-pocket costs. Here's why. Medicare alone doesn't pay for everything. Your deductibles and copays could add up to hundreds, even thousands of dollars a year.
Everyone's a little surprised to learn that one.
Adding a Medicare supplement plan helps pay some of what Medicare doesn't. And that could mean fewer surprises and more predictable out-of-pocket costs. Call United Healthcare and ask for your free decision guide. Or talk with a licensed insurance agent or producer to learn more about plan benefits, options, and rates. Medicare supplement plans let you choose any doctor, any specialist, anywhere in the U.S. who accepts Medicare patients. You don't have to deal with any networks or referrals. This kind of plan also goes with you anywhere you travel in the country. If you're turning 65 soon or over 65 and planning to retire, Find out more about the only Medicare supplement plans endorsed by AARP.
Thumbs up to that.
Remember, the time to prepare is before you go on Medicare.
Don't wait. Get started today.
Take charge of your health care. Call United Healthcare for your free decision guide and learn more about lowering your out-of-pocket Medicare costs and seeing any doctor who accepts Medicare patients.
Oh, and happy birthday or retirement in advance.
There's a lot to watch on TV these days. Problem is, most streaming options are incredibly pricey, and you'll end up paying for the local channels you can get for free. Luckily, there's a solution. Sling is only $40 a month, and you get awesome stuff like sports, news, and today's hottest TV for half of what the other guys cost. If you already get free locals with an antenna, now you can easily add the channels you're missing with Sling. It's the TV you love for a price you'll love. Visit sling.com/antenna to learn more.
There's a better way to begin your mornings.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Rush. Thanks so much for being with us.
Context and conversation.
There's a new study that might make you feel a little bit better. Okay. So listen to this.
On the stories that will shape each day.
Here with us now is meteorologist Scott Withers. You got just wave after wave after wave.
So you can get on with yours.
Make sure you stay with us as we monitor this developing story.
Morning Rush. Weekday mornings starting at 7/6 Central. Only on Scripps News.
Charging a former president of the United States under the Espionage Act of 1917 wasn't meant for this. An act for a crime so heinous that only the death penalty would do, and threatening me with 400 years in prison for possessing my own presidential papers, which just about every other president has done, is one of the most outrageous and vicious legal theories ever put forward in an American court of law.
Former President Trump criticizing the federal criminal charges against him as, quote, vicious during a speech at his Bedminster Golf Club in New Jersey last night. He held a campaign event hours after pleading guilty, or not guilty rather, to 37 felony criminal charges against him, including conspiracy to obstruct justice. And they are all related to his handling of classified documents. So now that the former president has been booked and arraigned, here's what comes next. Lawyers from the Justice Department will meet regularly with Trump's attorneys to share evidence, and that evidence is going to help his legal team build a defense. But who's in and who's out of Trump's legal team remains in flux right now. Two of his attorneys resigned on Friday, shortly after that federal indictment was unsealed. And it is still unclear who's going to take the lead in this case. National political correspondent Kevin Cirilli live for us in Miami right now. And Kevin, we know that Donald Trump is no stranger to all the shakeups that we see on his legal team. Where do things stand right now in this case?
Well, it's not just the legal drama that has surrounded him and covering Trump. You know that whether it's on the political front, there's often volatility. Whether it's on the geopolitical front, there's often volatility. Whether it's on his White House or on his campaigns, the team structure is to have that volatility baked in. And you're seeing that in real time play out as he defends himself against the indictment. And let's take a closer look at that legal team. Chris Kice has recently joined. He is someone who is no stranger to the Florida judicial system. He's frequently worked with other top Florida politicians, including Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, now a political rival to Trump. And he also worked with other Florida politicians. Separately from that, Trump is also relying on Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche is going to be helping him with this case, but also he's going to be working on the case to provide that synergy in the Stormy Daniels indictment case up there in New York. So trying to have that continuity on the team. Another advisor, Boris Epstein, he is a longtime Trump advisor. He dates back all the way to the 2016 campaign cycle where he worked on the transition team. And he is someone who, a source, Veronica, who works frequently in the Trump political orbit, described as a, quote, cancer, end quote, on the legal team. So that division already in the ranks with regards to the legal jurisdiction. Trump has had a lot of lawyers working with him, whether it's on impeachments, whether it's on the legal battles that he faces. But quite frankly, the Trump campaign, separate of course from his attorneys, are feeling quite confident today for how they have tried this messaging in the court of public opinion, particularly in the conservative primary process. They've been able to dominate the airwaves, dominate coverage, and they've also been able to dominate the messaging and framing of this amongst voters. And privately, the sources that I'm speaking with in the past 24 hours who are in Trump world have essentially said to me, what does it matter if he's convicted on some of these charges if a Republican is elected and he is ultimately pardoned?
And the narrative, Kevin, has always been so important to not just Trump, obviously his legal team. And I know that you've been covering the president for quite a long time. In fact, you're one of the original Trump embeds, which means that you covered him from inside his campaign way back in 2015. What do you make of the case? And what were your biggest takeaways yesterday as you watched everything unfold?
You know, when I picked him up on the campaign trail, as Trump returns to the campaign trail in Georgia, for example, where I covered his speech, his rally, because that's really what it was. It was before the Georgia Republican Party, but Marjorie Taylor Greene was there, and everyone in that room of more than 2,000 people was there to support him. There's this sense that he is tapping into the distrust that his base has, not just on the judicial system, but also on the electoral process as a whole. I was speaking to two folks here outside of the courthouse yesterday who drove all the way from North Carolina to defend him, and they're two women who are senior citizens, and they feel that they do not trust the judicial process and they don't trust also the electoral process. He's also projecting the experience that he's going through in the court by being indicted and saying that it's not just an indictment against him, but an indictment against each and every individual who supports him, and that if they can do it to the former president, that they would be able, this is the argument he makes, that they would be able to do it to any of his supporters. And quite honestly, this economic argument, which you're starting to reap in, I know, Veronica, that we're awaiting the Fed Chairman Jay Powell to make that decision with regards to rate hikes. Inflation appears to be easing, but if the Fed pauses the rate hikes, there's that sense that we might head into an economic recession. Well, the folks that I've been meeting along the campaign trail and here outside of the courthouse the past couple of days are really feeling the brunt of that potential recession and the brunt of that high inflation. He's tapping into all of those conversations.
And what are you hearing right now in terms of the markets? I'm watching them closely, and so far the Dow is down about 85 points. S&P and NASDAQ are up, though, slightly. And obviously we're counting down to the Fed decision right now. What are you hearing, Kevin?
Well, look, I think from a political lens, as you look at this, on the one hand, it's obviously good, strong economic news, and there were some economic indicators earlier this morning, Veronica, that indicates that the high inflation might continue to ease off here in the U.S., particularly in amongst groceries and some other key indicators. But if he pauses the rate hike, if the central bank decides to pause the rate hike, will that tip the economy into a recession? And if that happens, there's obviously political implications of that. A couple of weeks ago, we got some indicators, and there was a wide conversation in the economic community. You and I have had it off air, on air, that perhaps there won't be a recession at the end of this year. But that's always the fear. So for President Biden and his reelection campaign, that's the fear. You don't want to have a recession heading into 2024. But, you know, frequently, as you know, most people vote on their pocketbooks.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Economists are split right now in terms of whether we're going to see one or not. And if we do, will it be a mild recession? All right, Kevin Cirilli, thank you so much for holding down the fort there in Miami. We always appreciate it. So Trump's legal troubles may soon be multiplying, and he should learn within weeks whether he's going to be indicted for election interference now in Georgia. Atlanta TV station WSB reporting exclusively that the Fulton County, Georgia sheriff sent a team to Miami to observe how that city handled security for Trump's arraignment. The sheriff saying two commanders went to New York City when Trump was arraigned there. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis saying that she would announce charging decisions on her investigation between July 11th and September 1st. Now, again, the former president returning to his golf club in New Jersey after yesterday's court appearance to fundraise. Take a look at this aerial view showing people who turned out to show their support, lots of supporters and donors as well. The former president striking a defiant tone there. Florida Capitol reporter Forrest Saunders tells us what some other presidential candidates have had to say about yesterday's developments.
After protest,
we love Trump! Donald Trump is innocent! and the beginnings of prosecution, former President Donald Trump back in New Jersey.
They ought to drop this case immediately because they're destroying the country.
The former president saying if reelected, he'll appoint a special prosecutor of his own to investigate the current president and claiming his actions were permitted under the Presidential Records Act.
In other words, whatever documents a president decides to take with him, he has the right to do so. It's an absolute right. This is the law.
Trump has pleaded not guilty to the 37 counts in his federal indictment, alleging they're politically motivated. That's despite a laundry list of evidence, including questionable storage of classified documents in places like a bathroom, which Florida allies tried to downplay.
There are 33 bathrooms at Mar-a-Lago. So don't act like it's just in some random bathroom that the guests can go into. That's not true.
Even GOP opponents seeking the White House came to Trump's aid Tuesday. Vivek Ramaswamy doubled down on a pledge to pardon Trump if elected.
I have demanded that every other candidate in this race either sign this commitment to pardon on January 20th, 2025, or else to explain why they are not.
Trump's chief GOP rival, Governor Ron DeSantis, staying quiet Tuesday. Though his campaign press secretary vowed President DeSantis would, quote, wage war on the weaponized DOJ. Top state Republicans, meanwhile, venting about the indictment.
I think the frustration is with conservatives. We just feel like every institution has really been infiltrated and weaponized against us. Everything from the justice system to Wall Street.
The White House has said it's not involved in the criminal charges. President Joe Biden also declined to comment earlier in the day.
Would you comment on the arrest of the former president, sir?
But Trump's critics were far from silent, including the Lincoln Project,
Bad boys.
which trolled the former president all day with posts like this one. However, in the end, legal experts caution what matters now isn't online or on TV.
What you should pay attention to is what is said in court and what is filed in court. Everything else is just words.
A historic first day in court, now a historic legal battle that's just getting started.
And that was Forrest Saunders there reporting for us. Coming up next on Scripps News Live, the Federal Reserve wrapping up a two-day meeting. Fed Chair Jerome Powell making an announcement on interest rates this afternoon. We'll have the details after a quick break.
This year, Americans will spend $41 billion on auto repairs.
That's right, billions with a B. Why is that number so high? Because cars break down. Your vehicle is going to end up in a shop like this too, and if it's no longer under warranty, you're the one who has to pay the bill, and it could cost you thousands of dollars. That is, unless you call CarShield. With a plan through CarShield, administrators will pay for those costly repairs directly to the mechanic of your choice, including dealerships. That means you get protection on major parts and systems like the engine, transmission, electrical systems, and more. Plus, 24/7 emergency services for flat or damaged tires, lockouts, dead batteries, and towing at no additional cost. And there are even rental car options to keep you on the road.
I've been a mechanic for 35 plus years now. I've seen thousands of repairs over the years. My happiest customers are the ones that come in who have some kind of auto protection policy that's going to cover the repair that they wasn't expecting anyway. I feel great about recommending CarShield to everybody I see.
CarShield has a rich history of dependability, reliability, and success, and has been featured on leading networks like ABC, CNN, Fox News, and more. CarShield is America's most trusted auto protection company.
My mom told me to call CarShield, and I saved $5,000. You should always listen to your mom.
As soon as my car broke down, CarShield jumped into action, and I had my car back within days.
I've been with CarShield for close to 7 years. I have 3 vehicles covered, and I saved close to $9,000.
I called CarShield and saved over $5,000.
Yes, CarShield is a good value. Every plan through CarShield comes with a price lock guarantee, which means no matter how many repairs you need, the price you pay today will never change for as long as you cover your car.
Call now and save money with your price lock guarantee. It's not a matter of if your car will break down, but when. Call CarShield now before it's too late. Call 800-287-5264. 800-287-5264. 800-287-5264.
Get customizable furniture at joybird.com that complements your art, your green thumb, or just you. Plus, buy now and pay over time with the firm at joybird.com.
Athletic. Subscribe today.
Sure, you'll teach her how to drive a car, then use Greenlight to power her independence with crash detection with 911 dispatch, family location sharing, and emergency SOS alerts. Invest in your best investment with Greenlight.
When Lila was ready to sell her ring, she sent it to Worthy, where they took care of everything and auctioned it on her terms. Then, Worthy sent Lila her money. You're worthy of more. Get started at worthy.com.
Hey there, welcome back to Scripps News Live. I'm Veronica Cruz. Great to see you on this Wednesday. Thank you so much for being with us. Let's get up to speed right now on some of the other major stories that we're tracking for you. So at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will be announcing the central bank's decision on interest rate hikes. Top analysts believing that the Fed will decide to leave them unchanged for the first time in 15 months. Now, their hope is that this is going to help take pressure off the banks, which have slowed lending as interest rates have gone up and the demand for loans has gone down. More economic markers helping make the case for unchanged interest rates. New inflation reports out today. The PPI, or the Producer Price Index, shows us that wholesale prices have dropped 0.3% from April to May. And that follows similar good news in yesterday's CPI report showing consumer prices rose less than economists expected last month, which is a sign that inflation continues to come down. Ted Rossman joins us now live. He is the senior industry analyst for Bankrate. Ted, good to see you. Thank you so much for your time today. So we're all looking forward to the Fed speaking today. That is Jerome Powell, of course, and it's going to take place at 2:30 Eastern. And the question is whether or not interest rates are going to be raised yet again. Where do you fall on this? What are you thinking? Are we going to see another rate hike, or is there going to be a pause?
It's very likely that the Fed will pause today. The bigger question is what happens at the next meeting, or maybe the one beyond that. You know, there may be another quarter point hike, let's say in July. There's no doubt, though, that the Fed is definitely close to the end of this rate hiking cycle, if not at the very end. But a pause does not provide immediate relief to borrowers. Credit card rates, for example, are over 20% on average. That's the highest we've ever seen. We don't think that's going to fall anytime soon. Home equity lines of credit, those are at their highest point in about 15 years. You know, those are over 8% on average. Mortgage rates are closing in on 7%. That's a threshold that we briefly passed last year, but prior to that, it had been more than a decade. And car loan rates are up and other rates as well. So I think that a plateau is not instant relief. It's just not getting worse for borrowers.
So people are feeling the pain, as you described. But what does a pause do? Does a pause mean that consumers will feel even more pain? Or does it mean that it's just going to take some time?
It gives the Fed more time to look at incoming data. We have seen, like you mentioned, recent encouraging reports on the Consumer Price Index and the Producer Price Index. Now, we're not where the Fed wants to be, but there's also a lag to the moves that they've already made. So I think that really what they're trying to do here is give the market, the economy, a little time to digest the rapid increases that we've seen. 10 straight interest rate hikes totaling 5 percentage points. They're doing this, of course, to fight inflation, but it's cold comfort for somebody who has a credit card rate that's shot up 5 percentage points, or all of a sudden is looking at a much more expensive HELOC, or having trouble buying a house because prices are up and rates are up. It's one of these all news is local kind of issues. You know, if you're somebody with variable rate debt, which is especially credit cards and home equity lines of credit, that's where you're feeling the pain much more than somebody who, let's say, pays their credit cards in full every month and gets rewards but doesn't have to worry about interest.
So if we hear the announcement and Jerome Powell says, yes, we're going to go ahead and take a pause right here and kind of look at the economic data as it continues to come in, how should consumers be taking this news? I mean, is this a glass half empty or a glass half full scenario?
I think it, too, depends on your personal situation. Like, if you have a fixed rate mortgage, a lot of people are locked in at 3 or 4%. So it doesn't really matter that rates are 7 now. And maybe it's an impediment to trading up or moving elsewhere. But, you know, at least if you have fixed rate debt, which is most mortgages, car loans, federal student loans, things like that, at least you're insulated from hikes. The ones that I worry about are credit cards and HELOCs mostly, especially credit cards. The national average is over 20%. You have to make that payoff a priority. So maybe take advantage of any sort of pause, get a 0% balance transfer card, avoid interest for up to 21 months, maybe consider taking on a side hustle or selling stuff you don't need or cutting your expenses. Credit cards are one to watch because those rates are several multiples higher than most other forms of debt.
So when you look at the big picture, where do you think things stand right now? Because I know that going into this, Powell said that he was trying to achieve a soft landing here. So explain what a soft landing would look like, because honestly, it feels as though it's been a pretty bumpy ride so far. How far do we have still to go?
A soft landing is basically when the Fed can bring inflation down without causing a recession, which historically has been a very difficult task to accomplish. People have been talking about a recession for a couple of years now, and it still hasn't arrived. And I actually am pretty upbeat about the fact that inflation is coming down. I mean, yes, we still have room to go, but continued strength in the job market, I think, is a real asset. The unemployment rate is just 3.7%, which is up slightly, but still, it recently hit more than a 50-year low. It doesn't feel great for people because even if you're working and even if your wages are up, inflation has been higher in many cases. But I actually think this soft landing hypothesis is gaining some traction in recent weeks and months. I think another thing that's going on is lapping the big increases from last year because inflation seemingly peaked last summer. So actually just passing that on a year-over-year basis should help. Again, though, it doesn't mean prices are going to roll back to 2019 levels. It just means they'll be growing at a slower rate. But I think despite some of the negativity, the economy and the consumer are hanging in there.
When we take the economy, when the Fed is looking at the economy, you know, as a whole, and Powell is trying to figure out whether or not he wants to raise rates or pause rates, and let's say he does pause them this time around, but then the next meeting he does hike them yet again. How much does the employment picture factor into his decision?
There does seem to be an acknowledgement that the unemployment rate really only has one place to go from here, and that would be up, unfortunately. But that said, a lot of the projections from the Fed and other economists have unemployment going from the mid-threes to maybe the mid-4% range by the end of this year or early next, maybe 5%, maybe 6% in a really downside scenario. I mean, certainly we don't want to minimize the pain associated with anybody losing their job. But I also think it's notable to point out, as Powell does, inflation hurts everybody, so they need to fight this. And we're not talking 10+% unemployment like we saw in early 2020 or back during the financial crisis. It's a delicate balance, to be sure, and I know the Fed is keeping a close eye on it. But what they're trying to avoid is inflation going unchecked and really becoming sticky, to the sense that it gets embedded in this wage price spiral. And, you know, as workers, we love to get paid more, but as consumers, we don't want to pay more for the things that we buy. So that's the delicate balance.
All right, Ted Rossman from Bankrate, thank you so much for your time today. And of course, we're all going to be watching very closely, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thanks.
An Associated Press analysis exposes the severity of COVID relief fraud schemes. Analysts are saying that thieves stole more than $280 billion in relief funding. Another $123 billion was either wasted or misspent, and that accounts for 10% of the total aid that the U.S. government has dispersed. Now, officials have charged more than 2,200 people with pandemic-related fraud crimes. Thousands more are still under investigation. So the FBI is tightening some loose screws on a controversial surveillance program. The program, known as Section 702, gives officials access to phone calls and text messages of foreign targets overseas. But a recent court opinion found that the Bureau improperly used it to gather information on American civilians. Now the FBI is implementing a 3-strike policy. Officials will discipline or terminate anyone caught misusing the program 3 times. In other news at this hour, House Republicans announcing a formal investigation into Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, and that announcement came at the start of today's Homeland Security Committee hearing on border security and immigration policy. Committee Chair Mark Green of Tennessee accusing Mayorkas of being, quote, willfully derelict in his duties concerning border security. Congressman Green and his fellow Republicans charged Secretary Mayorkas' border policies in having led to an increase in migrant crossings and drug deaths in the United States. In the meantime, the Biden administration announcing plans to extend the temporary protection status of migrants from 4 countries, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Nepal. That move affecting an estimated 300,000 migrants. It means that they can continue living and working legally in the United States longer. Now, the program had been due to expire before the White House extended it. Straight ahead on Scripps News Live, Russian President Vladimir Putin sending mixed signals, new allusions to peace talks tempered by threats of new violence against Ukraine. Also, the State Department confirming Secretary Antony Blinken will be meeting with his Chinese counterpart as Washington looks to reduce tensions with Beijing. We'll have the details. Also, we'd like to remind you right here to give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We'll be right back.
Do you spend hours maintaining your gutters? Save that time with LeafGuard's maintenance-free system. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS. Mesh filters sit on top of your gutters, building up debris and eventually clogging. Then they need to be cleaned too. Honestly, your home should have been built with LeafGuard gutters. LeafGuard's wraparound hood deflects debris and keeps water away from your home. The one-piece seamless system is strong, 20% thicker than average, and built to last. Plus, LeafGuard is guaranteed to never clog for as long as you own your home. Right now, get a complete LeafGuard system for only $99 down, $99 a month, and $99 installation. You'll also receive a $100 Visa gift card with a free gutter inspection and in-home estimate. Damage from clogged gutters can cost you thousands. Never worry about clogged gutters again. Don't wait, you've still got time. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS today. That's 1-833-2-GUTTERS.
Hi, friends. Richard Karn here. Now, I'm known as the guy who can fix just about anything, but the technology in most appliances requires very special training to fix. My point is, even I know when I've met my match, and that's why my family has Choice Home Warranty. So we won't get stuck with high-priced repairs.
Choice Home Warranty covers over 25 major home systems and appliances. That's your AC, heating, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and so much more.
Imagine for less than a cup of coffee a day, Choice Home Warranty can help protect you from expensive major system and appliance breakdowns that your homeowner's insurance doesn't cover. But you have to call now before it's too late.
Every homeowner should have Choice Home Warranty. Your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover your appliances.
Washing machine, dryer, refrigerator, air condition. If I had any issues arise, they were able to take care of it immediately.
Now, homeowner's insurance won't protect you when your home's major systems and appliances break down due to normal wear and tear. But Choice Home Warranty will. They can help cover repairs and replacements.
Choice Home Warranty is the best warranty we've ever used. It would save you so much money in the long run.
Hey, I'm not the only one raving about Choice Home Warranty. They were named a Best Home Warranty Company and Best Claim Service by U.S. News 360 Reviews.
Call Choice Home Warranty now and get access to a nationwide network of over 15,000 technicians and the latest appointment setting technology so you'll know when they're on their way.
If I have an issue with an appliance or something around the house, I just call up Choice Home Warranty and I don't have to worry about that.
So, do what this old DIYer did and call Choice Home Warranty now before something breaks down. Tell them I sent you and get your first month free.
Call Choice Home Warranty before it's too late and get protection for your heating, AC, plumbing, kitchen and laundry appliances, and more. Call for your free quote today. Call in the next 5 minutes and get your first month free. 800-360-4534. 800-360-4534.
I don't get paid until next week.
I got you. I'm Dave, and I can spot you up to $500 of your future money instantly.
Up to $500 instantly? What else is in my future?
A new couch. Only!
Get up to $500 instantly with Dave. Nearly a decade after the Flint water crisis began.
Has the city called you to set up an appointment?
No.
Does the city have someone in charge of the Department of Public Works?
Scripps News investigates. Tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Scripps News.
Welcome back. back to Scripps News Live. We have some big news from the State Department today. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has reportedly spoken with his Chinese counterpart by phone. He's going to be heading to China on Friday. Now, according to a department spokesperson, Secretary Blinken and the Chinese foreign minister have discussed the importance of keeping an open line of communication between Washington and Beijing, a discussion that's going to continue when Blinken meets with a series of senior Chinese officials. This major diplomatic development comes amid heightened tensions between both countries, particularly over U.S. support for Taiwan. Russian President Vladimir Putin is making headlines this afternoon with a series of mixed, seemingly conflicting messages. Now, on one hand, he's threatening to launch new offensives to seize Ukrainian land, and on the other, he's suggesting that the Kremlin is ready to begin peace talks. Now, these conflicting statements came during a meeting with Russian military correspondents and war bloggers. Putin claiming Ukraine has suffered catastrophic losses in its spring offensive. He's also been insisting that Ukraine destroy a dam, causing massive flooding. And Ukraine, in the meantime, is blaming Russia. In the meantime, Ukraine reports that its troops have made progress as they advance towards Zaporizhzhia. One goal here is to take over a Russian bridge between that region and Crimea. Russia has been responding with airstrikes and shelling that have reportedly destroyed up to 40 civilian buildings. It's also stepping up attacks in Odessa. Ships carrying Ukrainian grain are leaving from that port and are also railway targets. NATO Secretary General, in the meantime, is continuing assistance from Western countries who've helped Ukraine gain ground. Jens Stoltenberg is offering his assessment after meeting with President Biden at the White House.
This is still early days, but what we all know is that the more land the Ukrainians are able to liberate, the stronger their hand will be at the negotiating table, and the more likely it is that President Putin will understand that he will never win this battle, he will never win the war of aggression on the battlefield.
Now, the Secretary General's meeting with the president was delayed a day because the president had a root canal on Monday. Our coverage of former President Trump's historic arraignment continues right now with a focus on the man charged alongside the one-time commander-in-chief. Trump's personal aide, Walt Nauta, will be arraigned June 27th on charges of conspiracy, making false statements, and withholding documents. The federal government alleges that Nauta played a key role in the mishandling of classified documents seized from Mar-a-Lago. He is a Navy veteran who's been as a close aide to Trump since his days in the White House. Scripps News national correspondent Cruz takes a closer look now at the once relatively unknown aide who's been thrust into the national spotlight.
Walt Nauta did not enter a plea yesterday as he stood alongside former President Donald Trump in a Miami courtroom. His arraignment has been pushed 2 weeks as he's still working to find a local lawyer to represent him, which is a requirement of the court in this case. He is facing 6 counts in this indictment. That includes a conspiracy charge that carries a maximum 20 years in prison. To this point, it appears that former President Trump's top close personal aide is sticking by his side. Take a look at this video. This is from Versailles, which is a famous Cuban restaurant in Miami where former President Trump went after his court appearance yesterday. And you can see in this video right next to him is his body man, Walt Nauta, again, sticking by his side. We also know that Walt Nauta traveled with the former president back to New Jersey, where the former President Trump gave those remarks last night after their court appearance yesterday. He is accused, Walt Nauta, in this indictment of conspiring with former President Trump to move boxes of these classified materials and also lying to investigators. According to the indictment, there are text messages that show that Walt Nauta knew where the classified materials were, and yet he told investigators that he did not know. So the big question moving forward is, will Walt Nauta continue to stick by his boss, or would he break off and try to get a deal with the government? I spoke with Palm Beach County State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg, who told me that is a decision that Walt Nauta needs to make sooner rather than later, in his opinion. But he also says that he may not be as valuable to prosecutors as one might think.
The feds don't need him to convict Donald Trump, so that puts him in a very vulnerable position. He doesn't have a lot of cards to play. The evidence is pretty damning against Donald Trump with or without Walt Nauta. So he needs to get the best deal he can as soon as he can.
Another interesting development that came out of that court hearing yesterday is the judge says that Walt Nauta and Donald Trump cannot discuss this case going forward. And when you think about how closely they work together, that will be a very interesting dynamic to watch. Chris Stewart, Scripps News, Palm Beach, Florida.
Now, in the meantime, former President Trump's remarks about columnist E. Jean Carroll at his CNN town hall meeting could be costing him more money. A federal judge granting Carroll's request to amend her original suit because of those latest remarks. A jury awarded her $5 million after finding the former president sexually abused and defamed her by denying the attack. Now, after the verdict, Trump called Carroll a whack job on CNN and then repeated his claims that her allegations were false. Now Carroll wants $10 million more. Our coverage of the historic arraignment of former President Trump will continue in your 2 p.m. Eastern hour of Scripps News Live. We're going to be taking a closer look at how the FBI shaped the classified documents case and what's at stake. Again, that's straight ahead at 2:15 p.m. Eastern. Coming up next, a celebration of community, culture, and music at the White House. We're going to take you to the Juneteenth celebration. Also, a rare photograph offering a glimpse of life during slavery. We're going to have more when Scripps News Live comes back.
Mom, we're so glad you're feeling better. You gave us such a scare.
I know, honey. Me too. But I want you to know I'm at peace with my home going when my time is up. And did I also tell you that I got coverage for my funeral so you and your brother would not have to worry about expenses?
I didn't know you were saving money for your final expenses.
I haven't. I called Open Care, and with one phone call, I was eligible for $30,000 for my funeral and final expenses.
That's wonderful, Mom. But how did you pass your medical exam with your health condition?
Oh, that's the best part. No medical exam is needed.
That's right. And my rates can never increase, my benefits will not decrease, and my coverage will never be canceled.
Mom, I'm so glad you called.
You can now get up to $30,000 in life insurance coverage to help pay for your funeral and other final expenses. There's no medical exam, and you can be enrolled with just one phone call. Your rates can never be increased, your benefits can never be decreased, and your coverage can never be canceled. Call the number on your screen now and see how a final expense life insurance plan can help you. We don't want to leave our loved ones with debt. The cost of a funeral can be $8,000 or more. A final expense life insurance plan will pay up to $30,000, which can be used for funeral and other final expenses. Call 800-790-5695 now for your free information. You can now get up to $30,000 in life insurance coverage to help pay for your funeral and other final expenses. There's no medical exam, and you can be enrolled with just one phone call. Your rates can never be increased, your benefits can never be decreased, and your coverage can never be canceled. Call the number on your screen now and see how a final expense life insurance plan can help you. There's no obligation. Call 800-790-5695. That's 800-790-5695.
This is a premium hand-selected bacon wrap filet mignon that's aged for tenderness and trimmed to perfection. This is a necktie. What do you think Dad wants for Father's Day? Visit omahasteaks.com/TV to order the Dads Want Steak package today for just $99.99, and we'll include 8 additional burgers free. So get him this. Not this. This. Go to omahasteaks.com/TV today because Dad deserves it. Just a little Father's Day wisdom from Omaha Steaks.
Sure, you'll teach her to drive a car. Then use Greenlight and teach her to save up for her own car. Mowing lawns and getting paid. Navigate the world of earning, saving, and investing together. Invest in your best investment. Greenlight.
Surprise Dad this Father's Day with something new. Fracture turns your images into more than a picture. Your photos are custom printed directly on glass to achieve brilliant color and clarity. Visit tryfracture.com and save up to 30% off.
We'd like to hear from you. You can always give us a call on our Scripps News viewer hotline. That number toll free on your screen. It's 1-833-4-SCRIPPS. Feel free to share your comments and your story ideas. President Biden and Vice President Harris hosted a Juneteenth concert at the White House last night. It was heralded as a celebration of community, culture, and music. Performers included Tony Award winner Audra McDonald, singer and talk show host Jennifer Hudson, also rapper and actor Method Man.
America is a promise of freedom, liberty, and justice. The story of Juneteenth, as we celebrate it, is the story of our ongoing fight to realize that promise. Not for some, but for all.
Juneteenth marks June 19th, 1865, when the last group of enslaved people learned that they were free, and it became a federal holiday 2 years ago. In the meantime, a rare photograph is offering unique insight into the lives of enslaved people in the 1800s. Evelyn Schultz with Scripps News Lexington, Kentucky, spoke with some experts about the significance of this rare image.
More than 120 people were known to be enslaved here at Ashland, but historians have discovered just 2 images depicting them. Today, UK libraries turned over one of those rare images to the Henry Clay Memorial Foundation. The stereograph features Aaron Dupuis, Henry Clay's personal coach driver. He was enslaved by the Clay family for more than 6 decades, along with his wife and 2 children. They are considered the best documented enslaved family at Ashland, although this stereograph is the only known image of Aaron. It was taken somewhere in downtown Lexington, most likely during Clay's funeral in 1852. As the foundation works to improve their storytelling of everyone who called Ashland home, historians hope this stereograph offers visitors insight into how Aaron Dupuis and his family lived.
We get the opportunity to see that. We may not always be able to know all of those elements. We can at least look at that and ask, what is Aaron trying to tell us here? That is not just the home of Henry Clay. It's the home of 122 people who were enslaved here through no choice of theirs. We have a duty to those people just as we do to Henry Clay, and we can learn as much from those people as we learned from Henry Clay.
The stereograph of Aaron Dupuis will soon be displayed next to a drawing of his son, Charles. In Lexington, I'm Evelyn Schultz.
Our coverage of the historic arraignment of former President Donald Trump will continue in your next hour of Scripps News Live. I'm Veronica Cruz. Thank you so much for being with us today. We're back after a quick break.
A better banking app is right at your fingertips. Download Dave and you can get up to $500 instantly with extra cash. No interest, no credit checks, no late fees. You can even earn more money with a side hustle or manage and spend your cash with the Dave debit card. There's no overdraft fees and no minimum balance. Ditch the big banks and get up to $500 instantly. Download the Dave app now or go to dave.com today.
At Rue La La, feel like $1 million without paying the price. Seize the deals on top names before they're gone. Get in to never miss out. Shop RueLaLa.com today.
Municipal bonds don't usually get the media coverage the stock market does. In fact, most people don't find them all that exciting. But if you're looking for the potential for consistent income that's federally tax-free, now is an excellent time to consider municipal bonds from Henyon & Walsh. If you have at least $10,000 to invest, call and talk with one of our bond specialists at 1-800-465-8465. We'll send you our exclusive bond guide, free, with details about how bonds can be an important part of your portfolio. Henyon & Walsh has specialized in fixed income and growth solutions for 30 years and offers high-quality municipal bonds from across the country. They provide the potential for regular income, are federally tax-free, and have historically low risk. Call today to request your free bond guide. 1-800-465-8465. That's 1-800-465-8465.
Do you have a box of videotapes, film reels, or photos that are degrading? Legacy Box professionally converts them to DVDs, thumb drive, or the cloud. Legacy Box is simple and safe, with over 1 million satisfied customers. Visit legacybox.com.
Attention all business owners. If you had W-2 employees during the COVID-19 pandemic, you may be entitled to up to $26,000 per employee with the Employee Retention Tax Credit. The deadline to file your claims is approaching. Call now to see if your business qualifies. This approved payroll tax refund program from the U.S. Treasury Department is set up to reward business owners who kept employees on payroll during the pandemic. There is no upfront cost to see if your company is eligible. Plus, if you don't receive a refund, you pay nothing. You want a trusted partner who understands the IRS guidelines. ERC advisors are standing by to help your business claim your COVID refund. You may be entitled to up to $26,000 per employee. This quick and easy call can get your business the money it deserves. Don't miss the deadline to file your claims. Just call 800-259-3916. That's 800-259-3916.
When Lila was ready to sell her ring, she sent it to Worthy, where they took care of everything and auctioned it on her terms. Then, Worthy sent Lila her money. You're worthy of more. Get started at worthy.com.
Do you have an idea for a story you would like to see or a comment on our coverage you want to share? We want to hear from you. Call our Scripps News viewer hotline at 833-4-SCRIPPS. That's 833-4-SCRIPPS.
From the courtroom to the campaign trail, former President Trump maintaining his innocence despite his historic indictment and arraignment on 37 felony counts. Thank you so much for staying with us on this Wednesday. It's now 1 p.m. in the East, 10 a.m. out West. I'm Veronica Cruz. Great to see you today. Welcome back to Scripps News Live. So now that the former president has pleaded not guilty, the question that many are asking is what comes next? Scripps News Deputy Political Director Joe St. George has the details for us.
Well, we don't know when former President Donald Trump will be back at this federal courthouse in Miami. South Florida is known as having what's known as a rocket docket, the speed in which cases in South Florida move through the system and quickly move to trial, although that is for usual cases. And a case involving the former president is a highly unusual one. Former President Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, saying in court Tuesday, we most certainly enter a plea of not guilty. The former president was not required to take a mugshot. The court uploaded an existing one. He was also not forced to turn over his passport. That sometimes happens in federal cases. There are no restrictions on international travel for Mr. Trump or any firearms. The only real restriction, Mr. Trump was told by the judge, that he could not speak with any potential witness in the case about the facts of this case. As far as what's next for Mr. Trump in this case, we know that Mr. Trump's co-defendant, Walt Nauta, is set to be back here in federal court later this month to enter his plea. Remember, this is just one case in Miami. A trial in New York City is set for late March. In that indictment, which focuses on alleged falsifying of business records, all eyes shift now to Georgia, where a possible indictment in that case could happen later this summer, perhaps in late July or early August. Prosecutors in Fulton County, Georgia, have asked the court there to not schedule any major cases around that time. One thing is clear, if former President Trump and President Biden end up in a rematch in 2024, look for this issue to be a big topic in the first debate. After all, President Biden is facing a special counsel inquiry as well into alleged mishandling of classified documents. President Biden's legal team says, though, there's a key difference, that when his team discovered their documents, they immediately turned them over. Joe St. George, Scripps News, Miami.
Now, outside of the courtroom, former President Trump appealing to his supporters on the campaign trail. Shortly after his arraignment yesterday afternoon, he made an unscheduled appearance at the infamous Versailles restaurant in Miami's Little Havana. A large crowd of supporters there greeting him, as you can see, and they sang him happy birthday, since today is his 77th. Trump also speaking with reporters, calling the case against him, quote, rigged.
I think it's a rigged deal here. We have a rigged country. We have a country that's corrupt. We have a country that's got no borders. We have a country that's got nothing but problems. We're a nation in decline, and then they do this stuff. And you see where the people are. We love the people, and you see where they are. You see the crowds and everything else. We have a country that is in decline like never before, and we can't let it happen.
Former President Trump also addressing supporters at his Bedminster, New Jersey resort. White House correspondent Haley Bull was there. She has more on the reaction from Trump's supporters following his arraignment.
Good afternoon. Former President Donald Trump now navigates being a defendant and a candidate. His remarks set the tone for his message going forward for both his case and campaign. He was defiant in his speech to supporters at his golf club in Bedminster. He framed the case as, quote, political persecution led by the Biden administration, doubled down on his view of a double standard, but notably gave some insight into his defense of holding on to documents.
The president enjoys unconstrained authority to make decisions regarding the disposal of documents. That's unconstrained to make that decision. Neither the archivist nor Congress has the authority to veto the president's decision. The Presidential Records Act does not confer any mandatory or even discretionary authority on the archivist to classify records. Under the statute, this responsibility is left solely to the President of the United States. Think of that. That's the decision. Think of that. Now, just think of that. In other words, whatever documents the President decides to take with him, he has the right to do so. It's an absolute right. This is the law.
But Trump is accused of taking documents that belong to the government, not his personal records. And keep in mind, the indictment indicates Trump showed classified documents while out of office to those without clearance. Meanwhile, President Biden has maintained his stance that the Justice Department is independent, but has been adamant in not commenting on Trump's case. But with 2024, Tuesday was also a moment for fundraising. Trump also held a private fundraiser. Haley Bull, Scripps News, Bedminster.
So this latest indictment is creating a unique challenge for Trump and other Republican presidential candidates. Trump is also facing charges in Manhattan and could face even more with the special counsel's investigation relating to January 6th and the Fulton County DA's investigation in Georgia. Scripps News political director Andrew Rafferty joins me now live. Andrew, I want to go ahead and get the Republican reaction to all of this. What are the candidates saying right now?
You know, Veronica, it's interesting. Over the past really 48 hours, we have seen a new litmus test almost in the Republican primary, and that is, are you going to pardon Donald Trump? Which is crazy to think about since, well, for a number of reasons, but since it presumes that he is guilty, which is obviously antithetical to our judicial system and to what Donald Trump himself is saying. But there are a few candidates who have spoken out forcefully. Asa Hutchinson is one of them. He actually was on our air earlier today. Let's listen to what he had to say.
There's nothing that should be further from a discussion in a political campaign than talking about a pardon under these kind of facts, under any facts. It's very juvenile to suggest that we ought to be talking about who we're going to pardon as candidates for president. That's a misuse of the pardon power. It should have no place in a campaign or a serious discussion of the office of president.
So Hutchinson's probably been the strongest on this issue, Chris Christie as well, but you have candidates like Vivek Ramaswamy, who was down in Miami yesterday talking about how he is going to pardon Donald Trump if he's elected and trying to get the rest of the GOP field to sign a pledge to go along with him. And
you're right about that. It does signal that they think that he would be guilty if they're already saying, I'm going to go ahead and issue a pardon if I become president. But truthfully, when you look at all of the Republican Party as a whole, it seems as though they are trying to present this united front. And again, of course, there are those that don't support the president. But I wanted to ask you about your take on the situation right now. What is your reaction in terms of how they're handling the situation?
Yeah, well, we've seen a number of Republicans kind of struggle to answer this question, but I think the comments from House Republican leadership are really telling. Kevin McCarthy, Steve Scalise, Elise Stefanik, they are all very much defending not only what Donald Trump did, but the fact that he had these documents and even saying things like they were actually more secure than the photos make them look. Of course, we are hearing nearly unanimous, even the folks who are against Donald Trump and say that this was not something that should have been done are saying that this Department of Justice is weaponized. So we're seeing that across the board. But then we are seeing a little bit of there's different levels of outrage and go all the way to those like those three that I just mentioned who are not outraged at all. They're outraged at Joe Biden and the Justice Department right now. So the Republicans who are in tougher districts, maybe even districts where Joe Biden won in 2020, they are really struggling to answer these questions right now, Veronica.
And what about the Democratic Party? You'd mentioned Joe Biden. How is the president reacting to all of this?
You know, it's interesting. He has had to, by his own choosing, remain silent mostly because he has a couple things going on. Number one is maintaining that the Department of Justice is its own independent entity and that he's in no way putting his fingers on the scale. So that's part of it. Of course, we know he also has his own classified documents investigation going on, but there was some new reporting that he's even gone out of his way to tell the DNC, Democrats who would normally be kind of out and about attacking Donald Trump on this issue, the Republican frontrunner, not to really talk about it. And that's reports that we don't necessarily have confirmed, but we certainly have seen just watching the reaction from Democrats that that's been the case. Of course, there are some members in the House, specifically more progressive members, who have not been afraid to take this on and talk about what a national security risk it poses. But it has put Democrats in kind of almost a weird spot between what we're hearing out of the White House, which is essentially nothing, to what a lot of the Democratic base wants to hear, and that is really hammer home what a travesty this is in their eyes that Donald Trump had these documents in his bathroom and just strewn about Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, you are absolutely right about that. We're going to have to see how it impacts Democrats in 2024. Some strategists are saying it's not the best strategy moving forward. Andrew Rafferty, we appreciate it. Thank you. And our coverage of the historic arraignment of former President Trump will continue in the next hour. We're going to take a closer look at how the FBI shaped the classified documents case and what's at stake. Again, it's all straight ahead at 2:15 p.m. Eastern. So U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken heading to China in an attempt to restore a fractured relationship with the nation. On Friday, the country's top diplomat will be heading to Beijing, and it all comes at a time when tensions between the U.S. and China are high. Secretary Blinken was supposed to visit the Chinese capital in February, but postponed the trip after the Chinese spy balloon incident over the U.S. Let's bring in Scripps News congressional correspondent Stephanie Liebergen, who's live for us right now at the White House. Stephanie, what is on Secretary Blinken's agenda?
Hey, Veronica, good afternoon. Well, the State Department officials have laid out, their goals for this now rescheduled trip of Secretary Blinken heading over to China. They want to establish more open communications between the United States and China, especially military communications, and getting that line of discussion back open and going. But Secretary Blinken also going to share U.S. values and U.S. interests, but explore areas of cooperation that impact not only the U.S. and China, but other nations around the world, like climate change. But there are other areas of discussion that might be a little more tense. Wrongful detention, something that Blinken wants to be able to discuss with his Chinese counterparts and the senior state officials there he's expected to meet with. But also, technology policy, something that we know China is deeply involved in. So the White House says they are clear-eyed about China, that they know the country is a major player on the world stage, but at the same time, they're expecting China to make some provocative steps, they called, like, potentially action in the South China Sea or that Chinese spy base that recently in the media and in the headlines being set up in Cuba. So White House saying that this is a time of what they're calling intense diplomacy, and saying that the U.S. and China are competitors, but there's a way to be competitors in a responsible way, Veronica.
So in the meantime, what is China saying about all this stuff? I mean, have there been any statements or maybe comments from China about Blinken's upcoming trip?
Well, when the spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry was asked directly to confirm Blinken's trip in their press conference earlier today, they did not confirm Blinken's trip. But the Chinese Foreign Minister and Secretary of State Blinken did have a phone call earlier today that the spokesperson did talk about, where the Chinese were urging the United States to respect what they called China's core concerns, with maybe Taiwan and relationships there being a key example of something that China is worried about. But they also want the United States, as China puts it, to stop harming China's, quote, sovereignty, security, and development interests in the name of competition. So likely sets up some potentially tense conversations during Blinken's trip overseas, but the Chinese did recognize that there is a need for both sides to work together to kind of stabilize this bilateral relationship.
All right, we're going to be watching this trip closely. Stephanie Liebergen live for us at the White House. Stephanie, thank you. Coming up in the next hour, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will be announcing the central bank's decision on interest rates. Analysts believe the Fed will decide to leave interest rates unchanged for the very first time in 15 months in order to help take take pressure off the banks. Now, they've slowed lending as interest rates have risen and demand for loans have decreased. And more economic markers helping make the case for unchanged interest rates. New inflation reports out. Today's PPI, or Producer Price Index, shows that wholesale prices have come down. They've dropped 0.3% from April to May. And that follows some similar good news that came out in yesterday's CPI report. And that showed that consumer prices rose less than economists expected last month, which is a good sign. It shows that inflation continues to cool. Now, in the meantime, the potential for the Fed to hold off on interest rate hikes and the continued cooling of inflation has been going over not so hot on Wall Street. The Dow Jones right now dropping about 136 points. It looks as though investors are remaining cautious until they hear what the Fed's choice will be. The S&P, though, is in the green, as well as the NASDAQ. S&P up 6 points. The NASDAQ is up about 28 points, but we will keep an eye on it for you. From inflation to drought, some farmers right now across the United States struggling to make ends meet.
You're at nature's mercy. And if we don't get water, how can we keep going?
But despite all of this, one farmer is finding reason to be optimistic as her family works to hold on to their family legacy. It's all straight ahead. Also, new details on a human tragedy in the Mediterranean and the ongoing search right now for those who are still missing. And don't forget that you can always count on Scripps News for all of your headlines throughout the primetime hours as well, beginning at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Mom, we're so glad you're feeling better. You gave us such a scare.
I know, honey, me too. But I want you to know I'm at peace with my homegoing when my time is up. And did I also tell you that I got coverage for my funeral so you and your brother would not have to worry about expenses?
I didn't know you were saving money for your final expenses.
I haven't. I called Open Care, and with one phone call, I was eligible for $30,000 for my funeral and final expenses.
That's wonderful, Mom. But how did you pass your medical exam with your health condition? Oh, that's the best part. No medical exam is needed.
That's right. And my rates can never increase, my benefits will not decrease, and my coverage will never be canceled.
Mom, I'm so glad you called.
You can now get up to $30,000 in life insurance coverage to help pay for your funeral and other final expenses. There's no medical exam, and you can be enrolled with just one phone call. Your rates can never be increased, your benefits can never be decreased, and your coverage can never be canceled. Call the number on your screen now and see how a final expense life insurance plan can help you. We don't want to leave our loved ones with debt. The cost of a funeral can be $8,000 or more. A final expense life insurance plan will pay up to $30,000, which can be used for funeral and other final expenses.
Call 800-790-5695 now
for your free information. You can now get up to $30,000 in life insurance coverage to help pay for your funeral and other final expenses. There's no medical exam, and you can be enrolled with just one phone call. Your rates can never be increased, your benefits can never be decreased, and your coverage can never be canceled. Call the number on your screen now and see how a final expense life insurance plan can help you. There's no obligation.
Call 800-790-5695. That's 800-790-5695.
Do you spend hours maintaining your gutters? Save that time with LeafGuard's maintenance-free system. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS. Mesh filters sit on top of your gutters, building up debris and eventually clogging. Then they need to be cleaned too. Honestly, your home should have been built with LeafGuard gutters. LeafGuard's wraparound hood deflects debris and keeps water away from your home. The one-piece seamless system is strong, 20% thicker than average, and built to last. Plus, LeafGuard is guaranteed to never clog for as long as you own your home. Right now, get a complete LeafGuard system for only $99 down, $99 a month, and $99 installation. You'll also receive a $100 Visa gift card with a free gutter inspection and in-home estimate. Damage from clogged gutters can cost you thousands. Never worry about clogged gutters again. Don't wait, you've still got time. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS today. That's 1-833-2-GUTTERS.
Tragic story. story to tell you about developing off the coast of southern Greece overnight. A fishing boat carrying dozens of migrants capsized and sank. Nearly 80 people are now feared dead. Dozens are still missing. The boat had originally come from Libya and was headed to Italy. Survivors have been taken to shore for treatment. International correspondent Giles Gibson joins us now live from Rome. Giles, what's the latest on the death toll right now and the search for those who are still missing?
Yeah, at this point, at least 79 people confirmed dead. And of course, in this sort of search and rescue operation, what the authorities are trying to do is to work out how many people were on board that boat and therefore how many could still be missing. At this stage, the Greek authorities have said that they've rescued 104, and then we're getting very different estimates as to how many people were on board when this boat capsized. The UN's migration agency saying that it believes it could have been as many as 400 people packed onto this boat. And actually, an NGO called Alarm Phone, which tracks movements of these boats across the Mediterranean Sea, they are putting it much higher. They're saying that it could have been as high as 750. As you say, this boat is believed to have started off in Libya, in a city known as Tobruk, and then the apparent aim was to go past the sort of southwestern tip of Greece and then head here to where I am in Italy. But clearly it never made it to where it was heading, and we've now seen these just horrifying stories coming off the coast of Greece, this boat capsizing around about 50 miles off the southwestern tip of Greece.
Giles, how does this incident relate to the number of migrants still trying to cross the Mediterranean this year? I mean, how big of an issue is this?
Well, even with the death toll in this incident expected to rise, this is already the deadliest incident of this kind off the coast of Greece just this year. We also, just a few months ago here in Italy, we had this tragic incident, a boat smashing against some rocks right off the southern coast of Italy, and 96 people being killed in that incident. Now, the right-wing Meloni government here in Italy, their response to that has been twofold. They declared a national emergency in response to that, and they've also been pushing very hard for there to be more action at the European Union level in Brussels. There was a deal clinched last week, a meeting of ministers in Luxembourg to overhaul the way that the EU deals with migrants and deals with asylum applications. But that deal, you know, it could be 9 months, it could be a year before it's finalised after the European Parliament has gone through it and taken a look. And of course, in the meantime, migrants are still going to take their lives in their hands and get into these boats, very often overcrowded, and make that dangerous crossing to try to claim asylum here in the EU.
Yeah, it really is sad. Giles Gibson reporting live for us from Rome, Italy. Giles, thank you. So today is a national mourning day in Italy, 2 days after former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi died. He died at the age of 86, and this is his flag-draped coffin carried from a hearse into a cathedral in Milan, Italy. A state funeral followed, a service that many found controversial. Now, Berlusconi was a polarizing figure. Critics complain that he was not worthy of the honor, and they point out that his brief ban from politics after a 2012 tax fraud conviction warranted that. Huge TV screens aired the funeral outside for people who weren't among the 2,000 mourners inside that church. Back in the U.S. now, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg toured the collapsed section of I-95 in Philadelphia. National correspondent Chris Conti is in Philadelphia for us and explains how one of the most heavily traveled highways in the country is now likely months away from repair.
During any given commute, I-95 here in Philadelphia would be one of the busiest stretches of highway along the East Coast. But as you can see, the only activity going on here right now is from engineers and construction crews who are trying to figure out how to get this highway back open quickly and safely. An estimated 160,000 vehicles travel on I-95 here each day. 8% of them are trucks carrying American goods to all corners of this country. That is part of the reason why Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg was here to address this collapse.
Part of what goes into the cost of everything that we pay for at the store is the cost of shipping. And if a route is disrupted, or if it's longer, or if trucks have to wait, that finds its way into the cost of goods.
It was early Sunday morning when a tanker truck below caught fire, spilling 8,500 gallons of gasoline. That fuel ignited, and the ensuing inferno burned so hot it melted critical pieces of the structure of this bridge, causing it to collapse. On Monday, the body of that tanker truck driver was recovered. No one else was killed, though. After touring the damage here, Secretary Buttigieg told the media that the state of Pennsylvania is planning to release a plan on how they will at least temporarily get this busy stretch of highway back open. Chris Conti, Scripps News, Philadelphia.
Officials have now identified the man pulled from the rubble of that collapse as Nathan Moody. He was the driver of that tanker truck. Well, investigators say a shooting that wounded 10 people in Denver on Monday night was likely the result of a drug deal gone bad. They say 5 or 6 of the victims were bystanders. Nearly 20 rounds were fired roughly a mile from the arena where the Denver Nuggets won the NBA championship earlier that evening. Authorities believe all 10 victims will survive. And in Tennessee, we're learning more about the shooter in the Nashville school shooting. 3 students and 3 staff members were killed at the Covenant School in March. Jason Lamb with Scripps News Nashville shares what the shooter's autopsy revealed.
The toxicology report goes into detail about was or wasn't in the bloodstream of the Covenant school shooter, potentially giving insight into their mental state. The report concludes that the examination did not reveal any positive findings of toxicological significance. That means no evidence of significant toxic substances in the shooter's blood. The examination tested for these 16 different toxic substances, things like amphetamines, barbiturates, cocaine, fentanyl, and meth, among others. The report did not describe any testing to indicate whether the shooter's blood contained elevated testosterone levels or other drugs used in gender-affirming care. That's been a theory posited by some to account for the shooter's behavior. But a medical expert we spoke with said even if there had been testing for testosterone and those levels came back high, there would be no way to infer that it would influence the shooter's behavior. That expert told us the testing would have been able to pick up drugs like Xanax or Valium if the shooter was on those, but would not have been able to pick up any antidepressants or antipsychotics. Republican State Representative Jeremy Faison is one of the several lawmakers calling for the release of the shooter's writings. He said of the toxicology report, while the report provides many important details, the toxicology portion appears inconclusive and only raises more questions about what led to the tragic events of March 27th. It is still my belief, he says, that law enforcement's thorough investigation, along with the release of the shooter's writings, will provide clearer insight into her behavior and motives leading up to that horrific day. I'm Jason Lamb for Scripps News.
And coming up next on Scripps News Live, Florida granting more parental rights to unmarried fathers. Straight ahead, one father shares a story on why he pushed for the change and how this new law is going to help even the playing field when it comes to custody battles. Also, a family of farmers sharing how they are staying optimistic as inflation makes agriculture even more expensive for them. Plus, we'd like to remind you right here to follow us online at Scripps News on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We will be right back.
I've been putting off getting life insurance, and I'm not getting any younger.
Have you been thinking about getting a life insurance plan, but just keep putting it off? Was that a yes? Then this message is for you. I'm David Denowitz, and I know the importance of life insurance. And that's why I'm here to tell you it's not too late to get the coverage you need.
If you're between the ages of 45 and 85, you can get a policy with a benefit of up to $25,000 and rates available at $5 a week. The phone lines are now open. Just call 800-354-6059.
And your acceptance is guaranteed.
I have a pre-existing medical condition. Is my acceptance guaranteed?
Yes.
Can I get accepted without a medical exam?
Yes. If you're between 45 and 85, you can't be turned down for this guaranteed acceptance life insurance regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam and no health questions, and rates start at just $5 a week. Remember, if you're between 45 and 85, you can't be turned down regardless of your health. Nothing's more important than family. So call now, pick up the phone, and get guaranteed acceptance life insurance today.
Just call 800-354-6059.
I'm 72 and on a fixed income. Is my acceptance guaranteed?
Yes, your acceptance is guaranteed, and your rate can never go up for any reason. You can't be turned down regardless of your health. There's just one simple question. Are you between 45 and 85? If you answered yes, don't wait another minute. Call now.
The call is absolutely free, and there is no obligation to enroll. Just call 800-354-6059. That's 800-354-6059.
One way to avoid expensive car repair bills is to be a race car driver. The other is Endurance.
Endurance saved me more than $7,000.
Without Endurance, breakdowns can cost thousands. With Endurance, you're covered.
Endurance covers nearly every car on the road. Plus,
you pick the mechanic you trust.
Act now for $300 off any plan, plus a year of elite benefits and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Call 1-855-588-2580 now.
Nearly a decade after the Flint water crisis began,
Deadlines were set and deadlines were missed.
a Scripps News investigates follow-up.
How long should they have to wait?
I would assume no more than 2 weeks.
Residents are still waiting.
Has the city called you to set up an appointment?
No.
Does the city have someone in charge of the Department of Public Works?
He quit.
Scripps News investigates a return to Flint tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Scripps News.
And a quick reminder right here, we'd like to hear from you. Give us a call on our Scripps News viewer hotline toll free. That number is 1-8334-SCRIPPS. Feel free to share your comments and your story ideas. Welcome back to Scripps News Live. I'm Veronica Cruz. Great to see you on this Wednesday. It is now nearly half past the hour and time to get you caught up on the day's top stories. Former President Trump insists that he has not broken the law. He is promising to fight the 37 felony criminal counts against him. A defiant Trump addressing supporters in New Jersey after returning from his federal arraignment in Miami. His charges are related to what prosecutors say is the mishandling of classified documents. Secretary of State Antony Blinken heading to China on Friday. He's going to be facing the challenge of repairing the White House's fractured relationship with the Chinese government. His goal is to keep lines of communication open. Blinken will be the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit China. A previous visit was planned in February, but was canceled over the Chinese spy balloon controversy. So for the first time in 15 months, it's looking like the Federal Reserve will leave interest rates alone. We're going to find out in about an hour from now. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is suggesting that this will be a pause instead of a rate hike. He says another increase in a key interest rate could come as early as next month and continuing to curb inflation. So like everything else right now, the cost of farming is rising around the country. Nick Saletti with Scripps News Phoenix talked to a third-generation farmer who's been trying to stay optimistic.
My granddad bought this farm in 1930, and so I'm a third generation.
So this is really in your blood.
Absolutely.
And it's that blood, sweat, and yes, even some tears that have kept Nancy K. Wood's 93-year-old farm alive.
It's grim.
That was how Nancy was feeling when we first met her back in 2021.
It was a really helpless feeling. But just to know my grandfather, you know, my uncle, my dad, his cousin, my son, you know, all the people that have been on this farm that are my heritage, and then my son, of course. You know, you just look at this and you think, oh, I don't want to lose this.
And she almost did. Nancy told me back when I first met her, there were talks of selling the farm. Arizona's intense drought, cutbacks to our water supply, and supply chain issues have all had major impacts on Nancy's Casa Grande farm in recent years. But these weren't the only issues. Do you feel like inflation is still another obstacle?
Yes, I do.
Nancy says just about everything on the farm is getting more expensive. Take hay, for instance. The seeds, the pesticides, the labor, even the fertilizer now costs more. According to the World Bank, fertilizer prices soared 80% in 2021, and halfway through 2022 had increased another 30%. And while prices on some fertilizers have started going down, in general, fertilizer is still more expensive than it was just a few years ago. That alone, your fertilizer costs could more than double.
Yes. Oh, it is more than doubling.
Fueling up her equipment has also gotten more expensive.
It's just horribly expensive. You've got tractors running and they burn diesel.
We looked at the latest numbers, and although diesel prices have started to dip, they're still much higher than they were when the pandemic started. In 2020, the average price was $2.69 a gallon. Last year, diesel soared to $5.18 a gallon. So far this year, prices are hovering around $4.50 a gallon. So why can't Nancy just raise her prices? To a degree, she is, but she says it's a delicate balance. You can raise your prices, but you can't raise them too much. Because what happens?
What happens is nobody will buy it.
You kind of have to walk a tightrope.
Right.
But today, there is reason to be optimistic here on Kaywood Farms. This season's rains have delivered a much-needed shot in the arm for this farm, which is helping Nancy and the rest of her family weather the storm of inflation. It means more crops, more profits, more opportunities, but most importantly, more memories for generations of Kaywoods to come. Your family's been farming for almost 100 years here.
Yes.
So it's not just a crop that you're yielding, it's your family's legacy. It's the hard work. It's all of that.
It is. And so if we make it to our 100 years, there's going to be a celebration. If I'm still alive, there's going to be a celebration out here.
I'm Nick Saletti for Scripps News.
In Washington, House Republicans are announcing a formal investigation into Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Committee Chair Congressman Mark Green of Tennessee accusing Mayorkas of being, quote, willfully derelict in his duties concerning border security. Congressman Green and his fellow Republicans charge Secretary Mayorkas' border policies have led to an increase in migrant crossings and drug deaths in the United States. In the meantime, the Biden administration announcing plans to extend the temporary protection status of migrants from 4 countries, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Nepal. The move will affect an estimated 300,000 migrants, and it means that they can continue living and working legally in the United States longer. This program had been due to expire before the White House extended it. In Florida next month, unmarried fathers will have more parental rights. The governor signed the Good Dad Act into law, and that's going to help even the playing field in the fight for child custody between unmarried parents. Kylie McGivern with Scripps News Tampa shares the story of one father who helped lead the way for change.
Snapshots of Bernard Jennings with his son capturing memories, moments Jennings says he had to fight to keep.
My son's 8 years old now. I didn't become his father legally until January 9th of this year. Really?
Ethan is the motivation behind what's being called the Good Dad Act.
At the time, I was a single father, unwed to the mother. We were in a relationship. We broke up, and I took care of my son primarily most of the time for 7 years.
Then Jennings says his child's mother picked him up from school and moved him to another county.
I went to the courts asking for help. I didn't know where she was. All of a sudden, her family didn't know where she was. Friends didn't know where she was. So I had to find my son.
Because he is not married to his son's mother legally, Jennings had no parental rights.
My name's on the birth certificate. I've been a part of his life since birth. I was there at the birth. But because she decided she was no longer going to cooperate with me, the law was not on my side anymore. The judge said that I had to serve her a petition for parenting. And I didn't know where she was to be able to serve her. Finally, I was able to serve her where she lived by finding out where she lived and be able to get time in court to establish visitation rights. But I thought to myself that so many fathers go through this and they don't have the resources or no people to assist them in the matter, don't have the money, and they're stuck.
That's when Jennings, who is president and CEO of the Biscayne Gardens Chamber of Commerce, wrote a proposal to lawmakers for a bill regarding unwed fathers' rights. Representative Christopher Benjamin picked it up.
What this bill does is it says to fathers who want to be fathers, who want to parent their children, that we see you. It gives them the right that we have given married fathers our entire existence. It lets them parent until there's a problem.
It's about time that we realize the reality of the family makeup in American society, and the fact that there are a lot of fathers who are not married or no longer married to the mothers of their children, and they are still great fathers.
The bill gives unmarried fathers who have proven they are the biological father the same rights and responsibilities the mother has. It passed the House and Senate unanimously.
Both parents are the natural guardians of the child, and both have the same rights and responsibilities of parents that a married parent would enjoy.
Senator Clay Yarborough sponsored the Senate bill.
I'm a Republican in the Senate. My colleague who ran it in the House is a Democrat. It's just good common sense, and we want dads to be involved in the life of their kids.
Because there are some men out there that are not doing what they're supposed to do to be a father, but there are other men that really want to be a part of their child's life, married or not. They want to take responsibility. They want to parent their child.
Jennings is now working to establish similar laws in other states. I'm Kylie McGivern for Scripps News.
Coming up next on Scripps News Live, a closer look at the challenges that pregnant women are facing and the efforts to overcome them.
I can say without a doubt that we are improving the relationships that we are having with our patients, and our patients are feeling like they are in control of their own health care.
After a quick break, doctors share their new techniques to ensure more pregnancies have a happy ending. We'll have that story for you next.
Attention all business owners. If you had W-2 employees during the COVID-19 pandemic, you may be entitled to up to $26,000 per employee with the Employee Retention Tax Credit. The deadline to file your claims is approaching. Call now to see if your business qualifies. This approved payroll tax refund program from the U.S. Treasury Department is set up to reward business owners who kept employees on payroll during the pandemic. There is no limit on the amount of funding. Plus, you can get access to your cash in a matter of weeks. You want a trusted partner who understands the IRS guidelines. ERC experts are standing by to help your business claim your COVID refund. You may be entitled to up to $26,000 per employee. This quick and easy call can get your business the money it deserves. Don't miss the deadline to file your claims. Just call 800-360-1106. That's 800-360-1106.
I was having problems with my legs and my feet. I suffered a lot of cramps, swelling.
I would dread going up and down steps.
Tingling in my legs due to circulation issues.
The aches and pains have just continued to increase.
Did you know if you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, or are over 40, your leg aches and pains could be from poor circulation? Revitive can help reduce leg aches and pains, swelling, and cramps. Revitive uses breakthrough technology to get your calf muscles pumping like a second heart to increase blood flow, reducing leg aches and pains, cramps, or swollen feet and ankles.
Plus, it's drug-free.
The cramping was terrible, and I don't get that anymore. Thank you, Revitive.
Revitive is FDA cleared and clinically proven to increase oxygen-rich blood flow during use. The smart stimulation works so well, over 3 million people use Revitive.
As a firefighter, I'm constantly on my feet. I wish I had known about Revitive a lot earlier. It would have made a huge difference in really who I am today.
Revitive has given me a better quality of life because I am living without pain.
Revitive reduces leg pains 2 times more than exercise alone in just 6 weeks.
We want to take walks. We want to do more social activities, just the typical things in life that I did not feel well enough before Revitive that I was able to do.
Yeah, Revitive is regenerizing my legs and making me feel like, let's do more.
Go to Revitive.com now to learn how Revitive can help reduce leg aches and pains, swelling, and cramps.
The doctor said go for it, and I'm in the best shape in terms of my legs and my ankles and my feet than I've ever been.
Try Revitive. You will see the difference. It works. It worked for me.
Get the most out of life with Revitive. Visit Revitive.com. That's REVITIVE.com. Or call
1-800-317-6641. That's 1-800-317-6641 today. Or visit Revitive.com. Order now.
There's a lot to watch on TV these days. Problem is, most streaming options are incredibly pricey, and you'll end up paying for the local channels you can get for free. Luckily, there's a solution. Sling is only $40 a month. And you get awesome stuff like sports, news, and today's hottest TV for half of what the other guys cost. If you already get free locals with an antenna, now you can easily add the channels you're missing with Sling. It's the TV you love for a price you'll love. Visit sling.com/antenna to learn more.
We now know Olympic sprinter Tori Bowie's cause of death. The Olympian died at the young age of 32. A Florida medical examiner's office says that the gold medalist died from childbirth complications. And according to the autopsy report, she was about 8 months pregnant and showing signs of labor when she died. It also states that Bowie may have suffered from respiratory distress or eclampsia. Deputies found Bowie dead in early May during a well-being check, and her death puts a spotlight on the nation's need to address high maternal mortality rates.
You know, women these days are having babies at an older age. We're using IVF more. African-American women in particular have higher rates of maternal mortality. And all of these things combined are leading to our rates of maternal mortality being 3 to 4 times of their white counterparts. So despite the technology, education, access, addressing racism in medicine and society, which does impact our healthcare and the delivery specifically to Black women, is something that we need to prioritize.
Now, doctors and scientists are working to find solutions to reduce life-threatening pregnancies. Scripps News correspondent Dan Grossman shows us the steps that hospitals are now taking to help reverse the trend.
When you come here, you do it because you want to see a doctor, a nurse practitioner, someone who knows more about your health than maybe you do. But more hospital systems are now incorporating patients as the center of their care to reduce maternal mortality. And it all starts with something as simple as how we talk to one another.
We're going into 8 for our team birth huddle.
You're about to witness something intimate.
Hi, Madeline. Are you comfortable? You can sit up some. We just don't want you walking yet.
Madeline Young is 39 weeks pregnant, and right now she's meeting with her care team at Cleveland Clinic Akron General to go over the plan for the final week of her pregnancy.
We typically also will do what's called delayed cord clamping, where we give at least a minute before we cut and clamp the cord. And that just allows the blood that's in the placenta and in the cord to get back to baby girl. So as long as she looks good, we'll do that. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah. Nothing about this conversation might feel out of the ordinary, but after a little backstory, you'll better understand why these conversations are new and a part of Akron General's larger plan to save lives.
There is something about that communication and that decision making when the provider and the patient are doing that together that their outcomes are improving.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's latest numbers, 1,205 women died of maternal causes in the United States in 2021. In 2020, that number was 861, and in 2019, it was 754. Black and brown women comprise most of these deaths, as they are 2 to 3 times more likely to experience complications during birth. Experts and researchers say a major reason for that is generational trauma, where distrust of the healthcare system can contribute to anxiety and depression, which leads to worse outcomes for both mother and child.
We have a society that has been really treating our Black patients in a way that is inequitable. And that's because of things like historical racism, systemic racism, economical biases.
Dr. Jennifer Savitsky is the chair of the OBGYN unit at Cleveland Clinic Akron General and has seen it herself. She says where a white patient might feel totally fine receiving care, Black and brown patients might feel apprehensive since they're entrusting their health and their baby's health in a system they might feel is not working in their best interest.
Trying to do as much not medicine as possible.
Okay. It's why these conversations are so crucial, so patients can better understand what is being done to them and why, and direct care teams on what they're comfortable with.
That creates a whole new foundation of trust and dignity for those patients. And we know that lack of trust is a major driver for why Black pregnant patients do not seek care or do not engage in care.
Here, the program is called Team Birth, and Cleveland Clinic Akron General is one of 4 hospitals nationwide that have been using it for the last few months. And the thing is, it's working, as hospital satisfaction survey results have risen tremendously since the program started.
12 weeks early, they didn't even hand me my baby. So now I'm hearing that I'm gonna get to like hold her as long as there's nothing crazy. It's just like hearing all that is like good.
Do you think this is saving lives?
I think that it will eventually save lives, yes. Yeah. I can say without a doubt that we are improving the relationships that we are having with our patients, and our patients are feeling like they are in control of their own health care.
Isn't that funny?
These are moments that can feel uncertain, even scary to some patients. But with something as simple as communication, healthcare workers hope they can create better outcomes for their patients. Dan Grossman, Scripps News, Akron, Ohio.
In other health news at this hour, new CDC research shows that nearly 15% of American children were treated for mental health disorders last year. Anxiety was one of the most common conditions, and data also shows that boys had a higher chance of taking prescription medications than girls. There was also a higher percentage of children receiving treatment in rural areas compared to larger cities. Up next on Scripps News Live, the future of bluegrass appears to be in good hands, and it's all thanks to a man on a mission to keep the sound alive. We're going to share his story after this.
Are you ready for a fresh new bath or shower? Well, now is the best time with 50% off installation and no interest and no payments for 1 year. Hi, I'm Christina, and it's time to flip your old worn out bath or shower with Jacuzzi Bath Remodel today. Everyone knows the Jacuzzi brand. They're the most trusted name in water for over 60 years. But did you know they can install a gorgeous bath or shower that feels incredible in as little as 1 day? It's no stress and no mess with a lifetime warranty. Now let's talk beauty. You deserve to start and end your day in a beautiful space that feels great and is custom designed just for you. So call or go online now to see the Christina preferred designs like Canyon, Farm, and Urban. Now that's the total bathroom beauty that I love at a price you can afford. And how about safety? Like an ultra low profile, easy entry shower, complete with grab bars and a custom designed seat. You deserve safety and peace of mind without sacrificing style. Because with all the worries in daily life, taking a shower shouldn't be one of them.
Every time I stepped over my old tub, I worried I might fall. I don't have those fears anymore. Jacuzzi Bath Remodel gave me a gorgeous shower that's safe too.
I've been trying to get him to remodel that bath for years. I called and they did in just 1 day.
And at a price we could afford.
With one call to Jacuzzi Bath Remodel, you can effortlessly transform that old, ugly eyesore into the stunning bath or shower of your dreams that you'll love for years to come.
Call or go online now to jacuzzibathremodel.com to get 50% off installation. Plus, ask how you may qualify for no interest and no payments for 12 months. And when you call right now, we'll give you our complete safety upgrade for free. Go to jacuzzibathremodel.com or call 800-218-1279. That's 800-218-1279. Call now.
Sure, you should teach him to ride a bike. Then use Greenlight and teach him how to invest in bikes. Teach him to be smart about money and he'll go far.
Super far. Oh, hey, Mom.
Navigate the world of money together. Invest in your best investment. Greenlight.
We're Worthy. We get you more for your jewelry. You send us your item. We professionally clean and photograph it. Then we'll work with you to set your reserve price. And you get paid up to 3 times more. You're worthy of more. Get started at worthy.com.
I don't get paid until next week.
I got you. I'm Dave, and I can spot you up to $500 of your future money instantly.
Up to $500 instantly? What else is in my future?
A new couch. Only!
Get up to $500 instantly with Dave.
There's a better way to begin your mornings.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Rush.
On the stories that will shape each day.
There's a new study that might make you feel a little bit better.
So you can get on with yours. Morning Rush. Weekday mornings starting at 7, 6 Central. Only on Scripps News.
Hey there.
welcome back to Scripps News Live. President Biden and Vice President Harris hosted a Juneteenth concert at the White House, and it was heralded as a celebration of community, culture, and music. Last night's performers included Tony Award winner Audra McDonald, singer and talk show host Jennifer Hudson, and rapper and actor Method Man.
America is a promise of freedom, liberty, and justice. The story of Juneteenth, as we celebrate it, is the story of our ongoing fight to realize that promise. Not for some, but for all.
Juneteenth marks June 19th, 1865, when the last group of enslaved people learned that they were free, and it became a federal holiday 2 years ago. Bluegrass music has deep roots in the South, and now there's a movement for it to remain relevant in American culture. Forrest Sanders with Scripps News Nashville introduces us to a man keeping the spotlight on that bluegrass sound.
The T.B. Sutton General Store in Granville is a place of history, of barrels, of all that good candy. A place where people come on in for a little music.
We welcome you tonight to Sutton Old Time Music Hour here at T.B. Sutton General Store in Granville, Tennessee.
The show goes from here to radio stations all over the world.
Happens every Saturday night. We have old time and bluegrass groups here.
Host and manager Jimmy Bilbrey
Make welcome the Tinos
is just about to bring another act up to the mic. But before that, let me take you out to meet that act. That's Amanda Thomas of Kingston, but she's not actually who's playing at the show. He is. 13-year-old Jacob Thomas spends time with his dad out fishing.
Something's jumping over there.
And spends time with his mom and sister Alyssa in these front porch jam sessions.
Sometimes it can turn out really cool, and sometimes it can turn out, what the heck was that?
Jacob's been playing mandolin since he was 8.
I went to see Sam Bush. Seeing him play, I was very intrigued.
He started picking up basic melodies right away. I was over the moon happy.
How many of your friends play mandolin?
None. And sometimes it makes me feel a little sad because by the time this generation goes, there might not be anyone that wants to carry bluegrass music on at all.
And that's why, back at the store, Jimmy launched Bluegrass for Kids. Each week, a kid will play a song with the scheduled act on the show.
It's just a shot in the arm for their confidence and getting them in front of an audience.
They're trying to get more kids interested in bluegrass music.
It's really a neat thing to see the young people taking it up. At this time, we're going to have our special guest come up and play a song on his mandolin for you. Let's make welcome Jacob Thomas.
30 young performers have taken part in Bluegrass for Kids so far, and it's growing. And as for the next kid who might be ready to take this stage, well, they may not have to look very far.
It gives me a bit of pride knowing that I am carrying on music that's been going on for who knows how long. I can only hope that that would be the case. If so, that'd be awesome.
Love it. Well, our coverage of the historic arraignment of former President Donald Trump will continue in your next hour of Scripps News Live. We're going to take a closer look at how the FBI shaped the classified documents case and what's at stake right now. I'm Veronica Cruz. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be back here with you at 3 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, Lauren Magarino is up next. She's going to have much more on that story when Scripps News Live comes back. We're going to take a quick break right here. Don't go too far.
If you, like many people, are covered by both Medicare and your state's Medicaid, here's something important to know. Now you could get even more health benefits than you already have. It's the United Healthcare Dual Complete Plan. To find out if you or someone you care about is eligible, it's easy. Call now to talk with us. We can explain it all and answer your questions. Medicaid gives you benefits, and Medicare gives you some too. But a dual complete plan can add even more benefits and features compared to original Medicare. You'll have lots of doctors and hospitals to choose from. $0 copays on all covered prescriptions, including brand names. And depending on where you live, you could enjoy other benefits too, like more dental care and rides to and from your doctor or pharmacy. Most plans even give you up to $300 a month to help pay for covered over-the-counter products, groceries, and new this year, utility bills. And best of all, with this plan, there's no extra cost to you. Remember, if you have Medicare and Medicaid, chances are you could get a dual complete plan. So call now to talk with us. Our agents are available to help. We know healthcare can be confusing. United Healthcare can straighten things out. And with over 40 years of experience, you can count on us to be there for you. With a dual complete plan, you could have a wide choice of doctors to choose from. $0 copays on all covered prescriptions. Help paying for covered over-the-counter products, groceries, and utility bills. More dental coverage, too, all at no extra cost. If you have both Medicare and Medicaid, you may be eligible for dual complete. So call the number on your screen now to see if you're eligible or to enroll. There's more for you with the United Healthcare Dual Complete Plan.
Do you spend hours maintaining your gutters? Save that time with LeafGuard's maintenance-free system. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS. Mesh filters sit on top of your gutters, building up debris and eventually clogging. Then they need to be cleaned too. Honestly, your home should have been built with LeafGuard gutters. LeafGuard's wraparound hood deflects debris and keeps water away from your home. The one-piece seamless system is strong, 20% thicker than average, and built to last. Plus, LeafGuard is guaranteed to never clog for as long as you own your home. Right now, get a complete LeafGuard system for only $99 down, $99 a month, and $99 installation. You'll also receive a $100 Visa gift card with a free gutter inspection and in-home estimate. Damage from clogged gutters can cost you thousands. Never worry about clogged gutters again. Don't wait, you've still got time. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS today. That's 1-833-2-GUTTERS.
Curious about trick plays and if ever that
local hero, national champ, now he's home and expected to save it.
Hey guys, am I dreaming or can we actually win this thing?
At Rue La La,